School district to switch to e-learning day Thursday following potential threat. 18-year-old arrested in connection with threats to Goshen High School. Crawfordsville suspends school after bomb threat. Student arrested. Student will be held accountable after social media threats identify multiple targets at Portage Middle School. Mississinawa High School receives threat, increases security. These were all headlines in Indiana on one day last week. And I get these feeds every day, and unfortunately, it's not just Indiana, it's across the nation. And what we're experiencing is an uptick of adolescents making statements that jeopardize our comfort level of safety at school. And the unfortunate part, in some of these cases, they're adolescents being flippant, not thinking through, making poor choices of words. And on the opposite extreme, they're very real. And so you've got from here to figure out the in-between and to assess, is this a true threat, is it not? And our highest commodity in our school district is our children and our grandchildren and our nephews and our neighbor kids. And so I appreciate that you all came out today, because our objective is to help educate what the school district is doing in regards to what's going on. Our partners with law enforcement at the local and county level, what the administration is doing. And so we're ready to begin our school town hall meeting on school safety. So with our school town hall meetings, there's no predetermined agenda or canned presentation. It truly is, we bring the concerns, we write them down, and then we'll just navigate however long it takes until we've addressed your concerns as for the reason why you came tonight. The school town hall meeting, I hope part of the objectives is to build a sense of community. And just to get an idea of the community that's here, how many of you have a connection with a kid at Lake Prairie Elementary? How about Oak Hill? And Three Creeks? Low intermediate? Lots. Middle school? High school? Okay, so we're well represented. How many of you don't have a connection with any student in the district, and you're just here because, as a concerned citizen, wanting to be part? Okay. We do have chairs back there. For those of you who want a foldable chair, feel free to help yourself, and there are some empty ones here. Let's do some introductions. I'm your superintendent, Andy Anderson, and just pass the mic, introduce yourself, and what's your role in our community.
Chief Policeman, Local Police Department. Corporal Burgess, Police Department, 18 years, and 11 years as a school resource officer.
Good evening, Vince Bell, Lake County Sheriff Department. I'm the Chief of Police.
And I'm not going to throw the mic, but back there is, I refer to her as Safety Stacy. That's Stacy Heems, and she is our security coordinator for Tri Creek Schools. All right, so let's get rolling. Let's build our agenda. What do you want to know as a result of tonight's meeting? What concern do you have? So you're going to just raise your hand and start input.
Safety protocols.
What else?
Additional protocols for kids with higher needs.
Additional protocols for kids with higher needs. Bullying. That's a part of this picture for sure. Yes?
I'd like to discuss the rationale behind the buildings being unlocked and opened after school hours without supervision.
Building unlocked after school. Okay. Who else?
I kind of looked at that, but the last 2 mornings I dropped my daughter off, there has been no adults outside of the intermediate door.
Okay.
I called this morning to let them know that.
Outside supervision.
There are no adults, the doors are open.
Yes.
Like repercussions for going against the first two and involving yourself with the third one
Repercussions of,
there. You know,
like,
breaking
if a
protocol, if
student.
there's gonna be ground rules set, child breaks them, what's gonna happen? Bullying, which is I'm sure an everyday occurrence for all the children, whether it's brought up or not, how will that be handled?
I'd like to know the repercussions that were already had by the ones that made the threats in the last 3 threats, you know, between the gun and the 2. I'd like to know what happened with them already.
Safety for like the bus stops.
Yes.
What kind of support we have for the kids, like, this has gotta be giving them anxiety, all these threats and stuff.
Sum that up with mental health support.
Yeah.
Our lives and what we can do as adults in our kids' lives outside of school.
I just say community partnerships, parent involvement, what parents can do.
There's a lot of things here. But yeah.
How would you sum that up?
Yeah, that parent involvement, community involvement, to support students. And yes, hopefully guide them in a good way.
So involvement plus guidance. Yes.
Follow up with students that have had violent in the past, not just last week, but last year, the year before.
Past, I would just call it past record follow-up. Okay. Gentlemen,
The timing of the notifications for the safety alerts, when the emails seem like they come out later.
okay. Notifications.
How do you know what's happening with the drills?
How do you determine if it's a threat, if it's just a kid being goofy? Because, you know, there are some kids that like cause problems, there are some kids that do stuff like that.
How do you know if it's a credible threat? Yes, sir.
Safe as their check-in.
I've noticed that some of the schools, they have more of a police, like outside police presence, like whether that be the cars out front. I know we went to the intermediate school, I know we have Stacy here a lot, but like there's no like, as the street is pulling down the road, you don't see a police car sitting out front, but if you go past Spring Creeks, there's always a police car there.
With the construction going on, how do you determine who is supposed to be at school versus a suspicious vehicle?
Construction workers. Yes.
I think feeding onto that, last year during pickup, we noticed doors were propped open by the construction workers, so.
Okay. There's props.
If a threat happens, like, when you call it, you learn to get for the kids to stay home so they don't get involved.
I'll just put threats / e-learning. AS units. I think we've got enough to get started. Threats and e-learning. Let's just start there. So a couple of weekends ago, there was a message that came out over the weekend. And we always partner with law enforcement. We take any student reports, start investigating, try to connect the dots, and trace it back to wherever it began. There was a question, well, you know what, I think it was the stabbing incident, so it's more than 2 weeks. Stabbing incident at the baseball field. And there was a massive manhunt, and then there was a lot of talk on social media about keeping kids home on Monday, e-learning. Those, so when the question was, when do you make that determination? There are a multitude of factors to every report that comes through. So context is always everything. What if the baseball field stabber, for lack of a better term, wasn't caught on Sunday? We called it e-learning day for Monday. And it wasn't caught on Monday. We called it e-learning day on Tuesday. And then Wednesday. And then Thursday. And law enforcement was not able to apprehend. So one of the questions is, well, how long would you be in that mode? The question before you would even get there, what is the level of probable threat to kids going to school? Is it local? We would reach out to law enforcement and say, hey, look, do you believe that the suspect is anywhere in our area? Do you believe that our schools are vulnerable? What additional protocols might we be able to take to keep kids in school? So to give a steadfast black and white answer, there really isn't one because every circumstance is different. But what we would do is rely on the experts who have the intelligence. When I say intelligence, I don't mean up here. They've got the intelligence of what's happening. Because we know they're sharp players, right? They've got the intel on what's going on. Was the suspect last seen 50 miles away, 100 miles, is now in Oklahoma? All of those are factors. So we would certainly work together. We would work with our building principals. We would try to dissect every possible scenario before we would make a judgment call. So it's going to be based on the level and degree of probable threat. If there's anybody in here that has a crystal ball and can predict and know for certainty the future, please leave your business card. Because this is human behavior, and every human is different, and you can never predict what a human being might do at any given moment. So always keep that in mind. But what you can know for certainty, we will always do all of the planning that needs to be done and consider everything that needs to be considered before making a decision based on what we know.
Schools are busy, they have a lot of children that they have to be responsible for. But how many times do you have to contact the school in regards to a troubled child? Kindergartner, saying bad things to your daughter, verbally saying, stab down.
Okay. So let me summarize so far. Let's say that it really falls into the category of bullying, right? The reports that the school gets, how many reports does it take to have something happen?
When we were, I'm sure everybody here, it wasn't like this back in school. There was limits that the schools followed. You get in trouble, school suspension. You get in trouble again. Obviously, school suspension. You get in trouble again. Expelled. Not allowed to come back the following year. I mean, you need to go back to the old ways sometimes, maybe.
Okay, so public schools, every citizen is entitled to a free and public appropriate education. Free and appropriate public education. Every citizen is entitled to that. Schools, depending on whatever the report is, the infraction, there's a difference between calling a name and bringing out a device that could harm somebody or trying to create harm to somebody. So there's a broad spectrum there. And the school has to respond according to whatever the situation is. I can wholeheartedly tell you, as our administrators and our counselors, by the way, counselors, could you raise your hands if you work for Tri-Creek? We've got some in here, and administrators, could you raise your hand? These people don't sit on those reports. There's always a follow-up and questioning and finding out what's going on. So depending on the circumstance, it might be, we're going to readjust the seating chart. We're going to keep the kids separated at recess. We're going to have a conference. We're going to have a check-in, check-out. So everything is progressive. As you indicated, it could lead to an in-school suspension, a suspension, and an expulsion. Everything is progressive. Throwing kids out of school does not automatically fix problems. And we saw that at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas incident in Florida, where a kid who had been expelled wasn't even part of the school environment, infiltrated the building and did bad things. We often think if we kick them out of school, it will fix it. But the track record says it doesn't. So, what you're finding these days are lessons learned over the past 20, 25 years that involving mental health providers, doing school threat assessments. So, apropos high school in Colorado, there was an incident. 2 people lost their lives. And had people connected the dots of this kid had trauma in his life. This kid had a grievance against a teacher over here, a girlfriend over here. Grades had drastically fallen. Transferring of schools. And what we found out is if all the people would talk, so if all the teachers had gotten together, and the bus driver, and the theater coach, and connected these dots with the parent who then indicated, well, the kids in counseling, and they did have access to weapons, we probably could have prevented that. And so what spun out of that were school threat assessment teams. School threat assessment teams, we get a report that comes in, we pull a team together, it involves law enforcement, school administration, and mental health provider at the minimum. And you start laying things down. Have we searched the belongings? Have we interviewed the parents? Is there outside counseling? So perhaps we have a release of information, ability to talk back and forth. And ultimately, how do we get support to a kid who's having bad thoughts about doing bad things to other people? That was a very long-winded response, but this is not a simple solution by just kicking kids out of school or slapping a suspension on them. For a lot of these kids who are troubled, they don't care about a suspension. It's the overachievers that are devastated and will correct behavior when they get suspended.
So I worked in the schools, and I've seen a lot of things happen with students, and they get a slap on the wrist. And the parents don't care. The parents aren't notified some of the times. That, to me, you're just asking for trouble, because if they keep getting away with it and getting a slap on the wrist, it's not going to stop. And our counselors, we don't have enough to counsel every troubled child in Tri-Creek. And I know there is a lot, and I've heard and seen stories from kids. But we can't put the rest of the kids in risk because we don't want this child who's acting out, has a troubled past, then maybe we should get law enforcement into their house.
So that leads us to consequences. So start going from here, the bullying, down to consequences. When you're talking about juveniles, those under 18 years of age, the school may not, shall not divulge the specific consequences. It's illegal. So just as if your kid had a consequence, we're not going to put that on the front page of our newsletter or blast it on social media, right? Number one, it's illegal. Number two, you probably wouldn't appreciate it. Maybe. But that's regardless, right? It's illegal.
Is a name given? I mean, I'm not asking for a name, I'm asking for what repercussions came to a kid that did this.
So
It's the same cost. I mean, for law enforcement, I struggle when I'm filing criminal charges on a student, whether it be a fight or a bullying incident, harassment, intimidation, anything like that. A lot of parents struggle when they ask me, well, what's the consequence going to be? And my answer is typically, you're really not going to ever know. We don't know. It's the best part about juveniles, we try to rehabilitate more than punish before they turn 18. Once they turn 18, then you're going to see it in the Times, you see it all on Facebook, but same concept of juveniles in the schools with discipline and same with criminal charges. I mean, we are never allowed to give you, if you know the student's name and I give you the crime or the charge I filed, we don't really divulge that.
But it was, I mean, it was in region news source, I've seen it. That
You saw, yeah, so you saw
some
one.
kids from Gary, something from Belleville, like, I've seen that. It was put out
Sure,
there.
again, what Superintendent Anderson said, and that's the law for us. We aren't allowed to give any information in reference to juveniles and how that plays out. And I think at times it would help. I think there's certain crimes that would protect our students, and there's certain times where, I don't think people need to know that they had a little bit of marijuana on them, or it was date tickets or things like that. I mean, I think there should be a level to where you do get to know a little bit of information, but unfortunately the law doesn't allow you to do that, so. Sorry.
no, that's great. We can indicate kind of the range of what would fit the punishment would be in regards to what occurred. So there are times that people are like, well, they just got a slap on the wrist, to use your term. But what people may not know is maybe we worked with the family and got the kid into regular weekly counseling at an outside therapy clinic, doing much more than the time required for our in-house folks to achieve that. And perhaps with even more specialization in their training. We can't tell you that. We can't tell you if a kid qualifies for special education. And the consequences are different for students who fall under that umbrella. It looks different. To say that nothing happens, counselors, admin, is there anybody who would like to comment to that? I see you shaking your head.
I just think think that there's a very thorough process. We evaluate lots of different steps and we determine a level of intervention. Unfortunately, we can't divulge that and we won't divulge that. But I think that the strength is in our protocols. We developed them over years with evaluation and revisiting them. They've been reviewed by Secret Service, by the FBI. So we feel confident that if we are following our procedure, then we are implementing interventions that are appropriate for the action.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess as a parent, if it was my child who was the one being picked on, the victim, if you want to call them that, there's a lack of confidence in what is being done to the aggressor. Not knowing if my kid is actually being taken care of versus are they seeing their bully every day. If you can't divulge that, and I understand, I really do. But at the same time, I think it's important that everybody knows that that's where a lot of parents feel. And also, if my kid is bullied, I want immediate response from the team. I don't want to be left out of the evaluation process. I may be alone in that, but I think a lot of parents feel that way too. We don't know what's going on with our kids in school. And that not knowing, even with crying questions or whatever kind of teeth pulling we have to do, we don't know. We all have our kids longer during the week than we do. And there's got to be some kind of balance that we can all work together to help all of our kids. Because I know we all love them. Everybody loves them.
What is the information you would want to know? If we can't tell you the
What I'm
particulars.
gonna say is, you said it's not a slap on the wrist, we can't know, blah, blah, blah. I was at a school, a child had made a hit list with guns and students' names on it. The child was sent home and back at school the next day. To me, you don't have to tell me what his punishment is, but he shouldn't be back at that school the next day. There should be a he should be having a consequence. I don't care if he's on medicine, I don't care if he sees outside counselors, that's fine. Whatever that situation with that child is, he shouldn't have been allowed back in the school the next day, and he was.
So with that,
And
like we
right
obviously
school.
won't go into a
And I
detail,
love that.
but let me just frame something out. It goes back to credible threats, wherever that is, right here. Thorough investigation. Is it credible? You may not know
It
that.
happened at 1 p.m., and he was back the next day.
So let's say that it was a student who qualified for special education services, and the student had already been suspended. The maximum number of days per year is 10.
Then he should be expelled.
You can't. So then there's a manifestation determination conference, and if it's linked to the disability, you may not move forward with expulsion. So
And that is a downfall in this society.
but that's a lot that our community doesn't understand. There are so many factors that go into play. You talk about trust. A lot is riding on trust. But I can tell you, these are dedicated individuals. Yeah, we have your kids more in a day than you do. And a lot of these professionals spend more time with your kids than their own.
I'm not saying anything about the staff, and also Tri-Creek doesn't train any of their subs or anything on what to do if there is an active shooter in the school.
So
Like, there's no training for those individuals coming in that can have the class for an entire week if a teacher's out. If God forbid something happens that week, this person doesn't have the email through Tri-Creek, doesn't have any access to everything the teachers and normal staff does, and they're a sitting duck with this whole class of kids, not knowing what the protocol would be.
So we recently identified that as an area that we must improve. And we've already initiated, because we had a community member recently bring that to our attention, we've already initiated the process of how can we address that. Let's go and then tack on to the end. anything that would be new to that.
Superintendent, he's had his hand up for quite a while back here in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were.
So I guess I had a question as far as, would there be a certain standard that could be set as far as like, okay, I understand you can't divulge all sorts of information about said child, whatever is going on behind closed doors, it is what it is. But if there's like a immediate threat to other children in said schools, that something could like, at some level, kind of what she had said is like, okay, what's going to be the quote unquote consequences? I mean, at some level, you have to, like, in a sense, do it justice, because if we're all left on the edge of like, oh, well, we don't know what happened to them, that's never going to leave your mind.
So in the last incident that we had, we spoke to that in best terms that we could. And it said something to the effect of, when these types of situations occur, the consequence is oftentimes a suspension, recommendation for expulsion, involvement of law enforcement, and referral to the probationer.
So I guess my question then is, at what level does everyone feel like some sort of, I mean, if there's a child that makes a threat against another child and it's deemed credible, okay, I mean, if you're just going to suspend the kid, is there like steps, or is that where you're talking like referring to law enforcement and how they want to proceed, and like, is that what you're?
So, I mean, we can tag team, because we've handled this in the past week. The last incident was at the intermediate school, and so there's a situation. We bring in the first step that we do. Anytime there's a report come in, that we need to do everything that we possibly can to ensure that whatever the threat is neutralized. So we're looking, where did the threat originate? And we're trying to get that person or individual into custody. The second step is this person acting alone, or is there a collaboration and other people involved? And sometimes that entails additional investigation. And to not spoil the investigation by giving if we push out a message like right away, what's that doing to others who might be involved? It's giving them a heads up. And so we're balancing making sure kids are safe with trying to ensure that there is nobody else out there that's related to this threat. Once the parties are in custody, and oftentimes it's simultaneous with law enforcement, we're working with our mental health providers, we've got administrators on the scene, and so if we know that our kids are secure, because we're still going based on credibility, and it depends on whatever the report is that's coming in. Is it imminent? Is it from a credible source, non-credible source? What does it entail? All of those are factors that determine the next step. Sometimes we may hold off on the notification until we have a really good understanding of what occurred. Because here's also the impact. If we willy-nilly took every report that came in right away without vetting things out, there'd be a lot of people showing up to get their kid out of school right away. And that's taken away from these people doing their jobs and these people doing their jobs and our mission to keep everybody safe. And then when does it stop? You heard the headlines on one given day. We stayed busy vetting all these reports and instances and bullying and social media posts and someone making a comment in class and a note that fell on the floor. There's a lot. And if we were to reach out and notify our public the very first time of all of this, number one, you run the risk of becoming numb. Oh my gosh, here's the 15th one today. And then when it's really real, we don't want that. when it's real and it's something that we need to be concerned about, we want to make sure that you know we have a reason to be concerned. And I hope that helps to shed some light. Every situation is never the same. And there are always multiple layers of detail that goes around with each situation. In the spirit of addressing these issues, I want to, we've got varied voices in here, and I want to make sure that the voices are all heard, and we'll circle back around. Current consequences. So, just as spoken earlier, there's this spectrum of suspension, recommendation for expulsion, referral to the Lake County prosecutor, all of the interventions on the side, the support, the wraparound, the mental health, all of those are in play. And I can just tell you, we have gone down that road. I'm also going to tell you, as much as you advocate for your kid, the kids that are making these statements and are being recommended for expulsion, their attorneys are contacting us, and now we're spending your taxpayer money defending our recommendation for expulsion. We follow through with it because we believe in it, but you just need to know there's another side of this story of parents advocating for their kid too. When they come in and say, they didn't mean it, it was this and it was that. And our heart goes, if that's true, our heart goes out to them. They're losing a full semester, if not a year of school. And that sometimes can exacerbate the problem, because then if you miss out on your schooling and then you fall behind, then there's a spiral effect that then gets to back to the Florida incident where the kid had been expelled, not being in school, and then goes back and does bad things anyway. We try to put a balance in place, and we never just turn a blind eye to the opposite way.
If it's an IEP kid, because you said they can only be suspended so many days, are the recommendations the same as the rest of
If the student is has an individual educational plan, and the special education umbrella, what was the last one?
And they made a credible threat.
And they made a credible threat.
You said they can only be suspended so many times per year. Do you make the same recommendations with that child, or?
So it depends what the credible threat is.
If it was a shooting threat?
The degree of, first of all, does it pertain to the disability? Yes or no? Is it something that the student would actually follow through, because we know the student? If the student, it's related to the disability and the student really isn't aware that you can't be making statements like this, doesn't have access to weapons, has not shown aggressive behavior to somebody, all of those come into play. But let's take it to the end. Let's say the kid did have access to weapons or would indeed follow through. We would figure out how for education to take place off of school grounds. That becomes, that is a last resort. And I talked about progression, and in the world of special education, you definitely have to be cognizant of the spectrum of the follow-through.
How do we determine if they have access to weapons?
So I'll let you all speak to that, because we say, hey, Mr. Corporal, it's reported that there are weapons in the home.
Mike's not necessary. So when we, for example, last week, we talked a little about this. We went to the home, we spoke with the parents, we checked the residence, make sure the home's clear, weapons are locked up. It's low, a lot of weapons low. parents usually have them. But that's the first step, obviously, just to make sure the parents are responsible with their firearms in the home. They're not just on top of the washing machine and wherever. So I'm not sure if that's enough, but it's that first step we take is just make sure the weapons are safe in the home. We're doing almost an immediate welfare check on that residence while we have the student, instead of sending them home, gain access to weapons. If they're angry or sad, we don't want them there. So that's basically that first step. If weapons need to be removed from the home, that's happened in the past, parents will sometimes give them up. But typically they are locked up and safe, and parents are 95% of the time very understanding and willing to take the situation very serious. Not sure if that was a very detailed answer.
No, it's good.
But that's, it's within, as quick as we can. The school, we know the school is safe, our students are safe. That's the next step. I'll send them right there as quickly as possible.
The only thing I would add is if we don't have a degree of confidence, we've had cases where we will literally search a kid every day as they come to school, which kind of takes us to bus stops. To finish that up,
Yeah, kind of. So, like the kids that are in the in-school suspension, are they busing with the kids? Are they getting dropped off at the door and just walking in? When do they get supervised? Because I know the incident last week, they were under supervised.
so in-school suspension,
Or not, I'm sorry, to be more specific,
Oh.
whatever the kid was that brought him into a
Isolated.
I'm not going to speak to a specific incident.
Isolated supervised.
Okay, so
You said that
if they're an
they're-
isolated, supervised, in school, whatever it is, when do they get supervised? Like, at what point is this troubled child not free to be with the kids? Does that make sense?
Are they allowed to go to lunch? Are they allowed to
Yes.
go on a bus
Yes.
without supervision?
Does it
Are they allowed?
We always go back to what we will develop a safety plan for students. I don't think I can speak too much on that, but that specific situation, students walk back to the building, I can almost reassure there typically is a safety plan where we are searching every morning and the building first thing.
So let me give you an example.
Was
Let's
that
just-
saying ISS though? When you put isolated, supervised custody?
That is not referred to in-school suspension. So let's just say, for example, I'm the principal of the building.
What did that mean though? Isolated, supervised custody when you found it out?
Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm the principal, and I pick up the phone, and it's a report, and I say, do you know where this threat or who this is about? Yes, and they tell me the name. And it just so happens the kid's sitting right in front of me in my office. Isolated, supervised, at the same time I received the report. So right then and there, I already knew the student was not in the general environment. And absolutely not, I'm not going to let this kid go to the cafeteria and get a lunch or be escorted or go anywhere until we address what's going on and make sure that there is no threat. I hope that helps.
No, I just wondering where was this toy gun in this backpack?
Again,
Backpack, carrying around the backpack?
here are the options that kids can have. Locker, backpack, and on their person would be the top 3 places. And we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. You know, if it's not in the pocket, then maybe it's in the backpack that the kid is carrying, or in the locker.
We've all been talking about credible threat. And as far as I know, there's never been a school shooting in Lowell. What do we do when for no reason a kid shows up and wastes half the school? What do we look for in our kids?
We're kind of struggling lately with parents not, I'm not accusing anyone in this room, please, so don't attack me. But we're getting a lot of parents who are telling their students they don't need to say anything. And that's the most difficult problem we're having. Just last week, students knew of, students were told by their parents not to say anything to us, our administration. I mean, first line, I need you guys to be there for us too. I can't do anything. Our administration can't do anything if we don't know more. It can be the smallest things. I mean, it really is. Anything you see, just bring it to us. Bring it to our administration. That's kind of that first line where I start investigating. Our officers will start doing the welfare checks we talked about. We'll go to the house for any reason. We can do even the littlest stuff. We'll knock on that door to see what's going on inside that home with weapons.
I didn't mean to, offend anybody here, but I ask my son how he's doing every day. I mean, he's only in second grade, but I can tell if he's had a bad day or not. But we often get complacent with what's going on.
Sure.
Are our kids afraid to talk to us? Like, I don't want to make fun of my kid because he doesn't have any friends. What are things we can look for, changes in our own kids at home? Because you keep saying credible threat, but it's a threat.
Credible threat makes a threat to of having a bomb. Does a kindergarten kid have the knowledge, the know-how to put a bomb together? If so, does the kid have access to all of the materials? Can they get online, order what they need, pay for it, have it delivered? I'm using an extreme example, but everything has context. And you have to piece together the credibility of it. In fact, Chief Garbo, if you could come up, oftentimes there could be some just random statement thrown out that, hey, there's going to be bad things that happen at Lowell Middle School. We have no idea where it came from. There's no way to trace it. And then if it's not credible, if it's not traceable, there's nothing to back it up, where do you start? Do you cancel school? Because of a random, so unless there's more to go behind it, and maybe you can elaborate on credible threats versus not.
I stepped out about 15 minutes ago because we had a bomb threat up on the north end of the county, and we determined about 25 minutes that the threat was coming over the email. It was getting sent to 911. It was coming from Europe. So I guess I want to temper everybody with a couple of things. The most important thing is that you stay engaged with your child. I can't tell you, because I read all of these school shootings, no one's ever surprised by the shooter. Everybody say, well, he or she was shy, they were by themselves. What you can share with your friends and neighbors is absolutely the importance of staying engaged with your child. Unfortunately, I hate the internet and I hate cell phones. And your school resource officer won't say this, but if we could have our dream come true, there'd be no cell phones in the school. It causes more problems for us than anything in the world. And just like these threats, we're seeing bomb threats that are being sent from Texas. This is the first one that we had recently. It's coming out of Europe. And so we don't tell everybody everything because we're going to run this down. And as you say, well, how do we know when it's credible? There's specific things that we can tell when it's just like this one that we just had tonight. Because I was already told I wanted the bomb dogs to go to that location first thing in the morning to check it out, all that stuff. So we start some wheels in motion, and that includes the schools. But we aren't going to tell you about it until we're absolutely certain that there is a credible threat, that we have information or evidence that's corroborated, and we can show there's been some positive mood toward the possibility of something happening. And that's not to ignore everything. I'm just telling you, these are becoming so frequent. And I don't know if you're aware of the fact, in the last 2 weeks, we arrested an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. There's going to be no tolerance from the Sheriff's Department about anybody that's involved in this, whether it's a joke, whether they meant to be funny. Both of those individuals are being prosecuted, and it's really all going to come down to as well is responsibility the parent has to being engaged with what their child is looking at on the internet, what they're sending to each other on the internet. I'm going to tell you in one of the cases, there was something off of TikTok that the kid was mimicking on the bus on the way home. And I have to tell you, all of it is a negative, negative, negative. The best thing you can do, and all the parents in all the schools, is to be engaged with your child. No, talk to them. Talk to them every day. See where they're at, because nobody knows their kid better than you. What we're finding is parents are disengaging with their kids. They aren't aware of what they're doing. They aren't aware of what they're doing after school. I will tell you, and the superintendent is going to say this, but you're very blessed in this school district. We met a couple months ago with all of your councils and principals and law enforcement. We are absolutely all on the same page. We take absolutely nothing for granted. And if you're not aware of the fact that we have a memorandum of understanding with your school system, if we receive information that there's anything going on in the school, only then we have the ability to log into your cameras and see real time what's going on in all of your schools in the city. We take this very seriously. Unfortunately, it used to be fire drills and tornado drills. Very important. District is way ahead of the game. You know, making these drills that we're preparing the kids for these protocols. We haven't got to that yet. Every school system in this county uses the standard protocols. If something happens, we're going to follow the same protocols. It's not something that we even take lightly. This is absolute, as you say. The time that we don't respond properly, that's when something happens, right? And somebody talked about doors being propped open. It's the same. And I can tell you that this school resource officer you're blessed with too, because he's been here really long, and he knows the kids. He knows that that's what it's all about. I was at the East Chicago schools for 3 years. Every day we'd have 4 or 5 brawls, right? And I'm not talking about a couple of people. I'm talking about 20 or 30. When we start to see that subside, because my people, like this man, knew who the kids were, the counselors knew the kids that were having problems, and they engaged ahead of the game. They actually, how often during the day, a fight started because they're texting each other while they're in class, and by lunchtime, here we go. So my point being, I want you to leave here tonight feeling pretty positive that this school system, these counselors, these administrators are absolutely engaged. And like I said, they don't take this stuff lightly, and I'll use the term frequent flyers. We have certain students in all school systems that are repeated problems. And I can tell you that they're identified, they're monitored, and quite frankly, they're counseled as the year goes on. And the superintendent, we have no choice. We have to actually let every kid in the school until they do something that justifies remedial action. It's not the superintendents of the state of Indiana, that's the Indiana Board of Education. So what they have to start with, especially in this school system, they're absolutely ahead of the game, and I really, really want you to be confident. I'm not a politician, I don't play one on TV, but I will tell you, I have been involved with school safety for many years, and this is one district that absolutely, in this area, is square away and anticipates issues before they become a problem. Is everybody perfect? No. But a couple of your schools are in our jurisdiction. Lowell, I can't say enough about the chief as well. Our patrol officer coming into the schools so the kids can see them. And the administration or the teachers know who they are. That's all part of, we have to build that confidence back with the students that the police aren't the bad guys. We have to have parents engage with their kids. And you know, that's a simple thing, but it's a big thing. See something, say something. That's what, all of these things. Like I said when I started, when these things happen, nobody's surprised. Because you know what? They say, well, it wasn't, that was a kid that I knew was going to be a problem. Well, why didn't you say something? Because there are plenty of people here, whether they're mental health professionals or counselors, social workers, they will absolutely engage and they will do their best to get this resolved with the parents or bring in any other resources we have. Again, that's what I would leave you with tonight. You're in great shape here, and please, obviously you love your kids. It's unfortunate that this room isn't filled with about 400 people, and that's just the reality of it. But spread that information, spread that message to the parents. If they just take 15 minutes a night to sit down with their kid sometime during the day, who doesn't know when their kids acting a little bit different, that there's a problem, that there's some kind of burden going on. And these people, these administrators in this school, these social workers will help you with it. If you have a problem with your kids at home, some things that are going on at school, I'm telling you, because I've seen it, they will engage and they will do everything they can to resolve it. And, yes?
I have a question. The child has been bullied in kindergarten. First year in the school district, never went to school, don't know anything. Been bullied with foreign objects being put up to her face. Over and over and over. Emails and phone calls going back and forth with the office asking what's going to